going to sit down with it? What's wrong with it? I just want to add one thing.
Please.
I was going to ask my question. I went to a Cuban talk recently, and the lady said how often Cuba was occupied by the United States. Haiti actually is occupied right now. And it's occupied by the UN now. It's not American Marines like it usually is, or the history. It's occupied by the UN peacekeeping forces. And I understand there's a big movement trying to get those people out because they want to have control of their own destiny, but they're unsuccessful. The UN refused to move.
That's great. I'm glad you mentioned it because that wasn't something I was planning on talking about, but I'm happy to mention it briefly. So the UN Peacekeeping Force is known by the acronym MINUSTA. It came in there for a number of reasons. One of the things that is most contentious about what the UN has done in Haiti is they went into some of the toughest slums of Port-au-Prince, areas that were really controlled by gangs and had lots of murders and all that sort of thing. And they either cleaned up and got rid of the gangs, or they murdered a bunch of civilians, or both, depending on your view of what they did. And it's contentious to this day. And so, people remember, okay, you don't have gangs controlling parts of the city in awful ways that they did before, but now you have this peacekeeping force that's their one good accomplishment that they're remembered for is at least ending this sort of this widespread gang warfare there. But now they're recognized for their even larger contribution to something in Haiti, which is introducing cholera accidentally due to negligence of testing their soldiers. So soldiers from Nepal, the waste from their plant went right into a river, and now, as you know, there's cholera in Haiti, and when there never was before, ever actually, it turns out. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of people, understandably, are sick of the UN. They want them out. I think there's a lot of internal politics involved, but to some UN member states, it's sort of a bargaining chip that they do this, that they have their peacekeepers there. I think there's a lot of internal UN kind of reason for wanting to have them there, maybe even more than necessary. And then Haiti's political leaders want them there, as much as they might say things against MINUSTA. I mean, Martelly, the president, other people, I mean, they, the history does have a Haiti of coups and that sort of thing, and there's this sense that at least having the UN around in a peacekeeping capacity would be important. If you're the president of Haiti, you might want some kind of safety net like that. But I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts on that. It's kind of a long-standing issue. I mean, the peacekeeping mission has been there how many years now? Like a decade, I think. It's been quite some time.
From El Salvador, one heard similar mining complaints. Gold is good, but the dirty waters, that's what we know.
A funny story about the UN. People call them by a nickname that translates from Creole to goat stealers, because there's some incident apparently that happened when some UN troops were accused of stealing someone's goats, and so people jokingly bah at UN cars passing by and make fun of them and call them goat stealers and say that.
What's that in Creole?
Cabrit, vole cabrit. Yeah. So. Anyway, so thanks for entertaining me on this mining issue. We can come back to this, other things. I might skip ahead of a couple things because I definitely want to be able to get to the Dominican Republic too. But I want to talk about tourism in Haiti. So if you've been following the news in recent years, one of the other major sectors that Haiti's leaders are saying this is going to help bring us into another decade of development and improve things is tourism. Again, they look at the Dominican Republic, which I believe is the #1 tourist destination in terms of visitors in the Caribbean, and maybe the 3rd or 4th in Latin America. So a very big tourism destination, and say, why can't we? We should have that too. We have great beaches, we have great interior. I mean, Haiti's a beautiful place, and so. What they're doing is, what a government does in that sort of situation, it says, okay, we don't have infrastructure, so tourism companies aren't going to come here if we don't have roads to get their tourists to their hotels and things like that. So there's lots of projects going on. And I've written a little bit recently about, like some of the land issues that are actually plaguing tourism in Haiti. I think so. A couple of islands outside of Haiti are, the government is spending all this money to build an airport, to build roads, and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, it just ends up displacing a lot of people who have been living there forever. But it comes down to so much of Haiti's future development, I think, rests on this question of land. Who owns the land, who gets to access the land, who gets to rent the land, because you have an island of people that's supposed to, it's called Ilavash, is this island on the, let me point to it actually. Yeah, you can kind of see it. It would be right here. It's this island, has two, for a long time it's had 2 resorts, and now Haiti's government wants to turn it into a full-blown, tourist destination, building an airport so people can fly there right from Port-au-Prince. But there's been people living on it forever. It's technically probably land of the state, because according to the Constitution, any islands off of Haiti belong to the government, essentially. But people have been living on there forever, and some people were invited to move there by a past dictator of Haiti to depopulate other areas. So it's this, people say to me, okay, I've been paying taxes on this land forever, and now Haiti's government is coming in, building the airport, building things, displacing people. And it's not just a matter of, oh, here's more people who are vulnerable to tourism. Things have gotten so heated on Ilavash due to public protests about this, people who are getting kicked off their land, that now it seems like investors are actually shying away from the whole project. So people that said, yeah, we might consider building a hotel there, don't seem to be anywhere to be found anymore. Investors have backed away because Haiti's leaders announced this, went forward with a $260 million project without thinking through the land implications of that, and the people who are living on that land, who might not have titles to it, but that aren't going to be happy if you kick them off the only land they have. So anyways, I was there in December, did a few stories recently about that, but it really exemplifies how, I could talk for any industry, mining of course, I mean you can talk about how land issues are plaguing development, but especially in tourism, I mean that's huge. The other island up here, a cruise ship company wants to open a destination there, and it turns out this guy in Texas probably owns the land where they want to open it, because one of the dictators of Haiti, Papadoc Duvalier, Jean-Francois Duvalier, gave away that land to some guy in Texas 60 years ago, right? So you have all these kind of historical reasons that historical perhaps abuses of power that are now plaguing the present. Haiti has a really fascinating land history, right? I mean, at the time of independence, 1804, Haiti is officially independent. Freed slaves. The leaders of Haiti say, actually, freed slaves are thinking this is going to be we're going to have our own land, we're going to grow our own things in our own land. The first leaders of Haiti said, actually, this land still has to belong to the state, and really you should probably still stay on those plantations and keep working for very little money, actually, because we need to pay a debt to France to recognize our freedom, or else we can't trade with anybody. We can't sell any of the sugar cane anyways, because no one in the world will recognize a bunch of freed slaves. So Haiti, to get that recognition, had to pay off a big debt to France, kind of bought its freedom actually in a way. And the result being that people who had freed themselves are now being told by their new black leaders, get back to work on the plantation essentially. And so it's really interesting how these land dynamics have changed, and different governments that have tried to keep land with the state, different governments that have given land away to the people. Anyways, I'd love to take any questions about the land issues, but also I've written a few stories about how land plagues tourism ambitions here. But we could also move on. I want to get just quickly to the Dominican Republic part of things. If there's any questions, I can take them. But let me just see if we can skip ahead. Okay, just to conclude with some Haiti stuff. I mean, people ask me, like, why isn't Haiti, a better place after all the aid that was sent after the earthquake, right? One of the most common questions I hear about Haiti. Why didn't all this money work? There was so much money, $10 billion pledged, now 6 point something of it dispersed. I mean, that's a lot of money spent on trying to make a very small country better after the earthquake, right? And so why hasn't that worked? I'm not going to have time to answer that question, or if anyone can, but I do want to say that when we're considering the answer to that question, you have to look at the people who controlled the money. You can't say, oh, those Haitian leaders, they took all the money. Only 5%, about 5% of all the aid money to Haiti after the earthquake went through Haiti's government. Only 5% of it, Haiti's government had any say over what was even done with it. So if you're going to look at who's to blame for the fact that Haiti hasn't progressed as much with this money as it maybe could have, you have to look for the people who controlled it, which were largely American and other contractors, right? Contractors who get money from USAID to build projects. I mean, the vast majority, if any of all the groups that received money of this aid money, I mean, contractors, mostly from the Washington, D.C. area, were the main ones. So I've written a lot on the importance of or the failures of aid agencies, of donors to focus on local procurement of items, focus on local businesses, local organizations in terms of the reconstruction. But the fact is, a lot of money that was going into Haiti never made it there. It made it into the salaries and security apparatus and everything of these contractors. And a lot of times. Not to say it's not necessary to have contractors to build something, but you know, I mean, if you're going to look at who's to blame for Haiti still being where it is, I think you have to look at the people who actually had control of money. USAID, different government agencies, and then down through the contractors who implemented those things. All right, let's get any other questions about Haiti or any comments? I'd love to take them, or we can also take them later. Yeah, go ahead.
Just as an observation of the tourism, this is a land issue. Going forward, Haiti might face some serious competition from both Cuba and Puerto Rico. There's been a lot of discussion in Puerto Rico about recouping its losses in tourism, which it has had over the years. And I think this is particularly acute given the fact that Cuba's coming into the picture.
I'll be really interested to see what happens. You know, when Americans could no longer travel to Cuba, they started going to Haiti. I met this Wisconsin couple. They're like in their 80s. I read a story about them who had been vacationing for decades, you know, in Haiti, and this is common. You know, people went to Haiti. It was a cheap place to vacation after Cuba was no longer an option, and you know, so people remember, you know, grand days of, you know, the couple fancy hotels Haiti had. Graham Greene's book takes place largely at one famous old hotel that still exists in Haiti. The Comedians is the name of this famous book, and you know, it was a tourism destination. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now with Cuba potentially being another American tourism destination in the future, possibly. I'm sure many of you know more about those possibilities than me, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And I don't know at all anything about the Puerto Rican tourism market, but I'd be curious to learn more about that. Yeah. Huh. Well, speaking of the Dominican Republic, then we can also talk a little bit about tourism because, yeah, the Dominican Republic, you know, the main industries. You know, economically, it's night and day. It really is kind of night and day between Haiti and the DR in terms of the national economy, right? The Dominican Republic has now mining. It's had manufacturing for a long time, lots of textiles. It has, you know, fairly robust agriculture, and then remittances from Dominicans who live abroad are either the first or second largest source of GDP, of like money moving that exists in the DR is actually remittances from Dominicans who live abroad. The other one is tourism, and so you know, again, you can imagine why Haitians look at the DR as an example of, you know, why can't we do the same sort of thing? And you know, maybe they can. We'll see. But what I want to talk about in the Dominican Republic is something a little pretty different, which is race, actually, and national identity. So when I studied abroad in the Dominican Republic, this was 2007, I was a sophomore here. When I was studying, I was doing research on Dominican-Haitian relations. I lived with a couple of Dominican families, and you know, I couldn't help but noticing there's different ways in which my family members would refer to, you know, Haitians or dark-skinned Dominicans, so many different interesting names for skin color and that sort of thing. So I was very fascinated by all of this. Started to realize that there were a lot of misconceptions about Haiti, certainly after I visited Haiti for the first time and came back to the DR, and naturally I realized there were a lot of misconceptions that many Dominicans had about Haitians in Haiti, and so I ended up studying what people, academics kind of refer to as anti-Haitianismo, like anti-Haitianism, this sort of phenomenon that has existed in some capacity for many years now in the Dominican Republic. So how did this happen? So first of all, I assume some people know, certainly the ones from the island will know this, but it surprises people that the Dominican Republic didn't get its independence from Spain. The Dominican Republic won its independence from Haiti, right? I mean, Haiti, after becoming independent, invaded and took over the whole island for about 22 years. And at the end of that, the Dominican Republic leaders, you know, threw off Haitian, you could argue Haitian colonialism in a way. So there's this strong, you know, since the birth of the nation, this identity of we are not independent from Spain, we're independent from Haiti. Interestingly enough, the Dominican Republic essentially, upon getting that independence, in theory, kicking the Haitian military out, actually went to Spain, and this is the only case I know of this happening, went to Spain and said, actually, can you recolonize us? That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but there was a period of time where the Dominican Republic was again annexed to Spain because they were afraid Haiti would just kind of come invade again. It was a very weak state still. But you can imagine, freedom, independence of your nation, but being so concerned that Haiti might take you back that you actually are okay being a quasi-colony of Spain. So you have this from the very beginning. You have this identity of rejecting Haiti, rejecting things that are Haitian. There's a lot that happens, but we're going to skip ahead to one of the most famous incidents that kind of progressed this idea of being anti-Haitian, and that was under the dictator Trujillo, who dictated over the Dominican Republic from, oh boy, let's see, 1930 or 31, one of the two? 30 to 61. And in 1937, famously, he orders the massacre of tens of thousands of Haitians, people who were working sugarcane, people who were working, it was largely in the border areas. And so he does this to define the border, which was slightly different at the time. He does this for lots of reasons, but Trujillo is a very Spanish-oriented man. He thinks of his country as Spanish, right? And really starts to define in lots of ways, but including physically, killing Haitians, this identity of the Dominican Republic being aligned with Spain still, being more civilized as a European nation, and in contrast to Haitians, which he associated with backwards and African. Interestingly enough, one of Trujillo's grandparents was Haitian, but he definitely didn't advertise that. So yeah, that's a major event, right? And that's something that people on the island remember to this day. People are aware of this massacre on both sides of the island. The river is named after the massacre, the river that divides makes up part of the border. But after Trujillo, we have this man, a series of people who are very, very anti-Haitian who come to power. One is named Balaguer, a prolific author, writes lots of books about this sort of subject of being anti-Haitian, writing about Haitians and Africans being backwards, less intelligent. All these things continue until at least 2007. And the reason I say that is that when I was there in 2007, I was studying whether or not and to what extent anti-Haitian prejudice originates in schools, in high schools, or earlier in the Dominican Republic. So I did little tests of 100-something high school students, seniors graduating, basic questions about, factual questions about who, Dominicans are descendants of what? Europeans, Africans, Haitians are descendants of A, Europeans, B, Africans. Just trying to understand if people understand in the Dominican Republic that they're descendants of Africans, and kind of the history there. But then looking into associations. So, one thing, if you go to the Dominican Republic, a lot of times you may hear things that if a crime happens or something, it'll often be blamed or assumed that it's Los Haitianos. So, and I'm not saying among everybody, but I have to say, having lived there in a long time, I've often heard this whenever crime is brought up. So one of the questions I asked high school students is, okay, which group commits the most crimes in the Dominican Republic that exist? Haitians, and the definition of Haitians is kind of problematic too, but Haitians or Dominican. And 97% of the students I interviewed said, oh, Haitians commit by far more crimes by number, than Dominicans. But in fact, the best evidence at the time was that Haitians committed 3% of the felonies in the Dominican Republic, But there's just this, long-standing, I was trying to find out why is this, why do people have this misconception of Haitians as very criminal, of there being way more Haitians than there even are in the Dominican Republic and that sort of thing. So I studied that while I was abroad, followed up with that when I came back to Madison a little bit. And I'm writing about it still, and so that's why I wanted to talk in the Dominican Republic about this issue, and I apologize if it's not necessarily even, instead of talking about the economy, I'm talking about this, but it happens to be what I'm writing about now for a magazine in Washington on this subject. And, the reason I say that this kind of institutionalized anti-Haitianismo existed to at least 2007 is that in 2007, I was studying textbooks in the Dominican Republic that high school students use. And these textbooks had very racially charged,
They're unsuccessful. The UN refused to move
That's great. I'm glad you mentioned it because that wasn't something I was planning on talking about, but I'm happy to mention it briefly. So the UN peacekeeping force is known by the acronym MINUSTA. It came in there for a number of reasons. One of the things that is most contentious about what the UN has done in Haiti is they went into some of the toughest slums of Port-au-Prince, areas that were really controlled by gangs and had lots of murders and all that sort of thing. And they either cleaned up and got rid of the gangs, or they murdered a bunch of civilians, or both, depending on your view of what they did, when there never was before, ever, actually, it turns out. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of people, understandably, are sick of the UN, they want them out. I think there's a lot of internal politics involved, but to some UN member states, it's sort of a bargaining chip that they do this, that they have their peacekeepers there. I think there's a lot of internal UN kind of reason for wanting to have them there, maybe even more than necessary, and then Haiti's political leaders want them there, as much as they might say things against MINUSTA. I mean, Martelly, the president, other people, I mean, they, you know, the history does have a Haiti of coups and that sort of thing, and there's this sense that at least having the UN around in a peacekeeping capacity would be important. If you're the president of Haiti, you might want some kind of safety net like that. But I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts on that. It's kind of a long-standing issue. I mean, the peacekeeping mission has been there how many years now? Like a decade, I think. It's been quite some time.
From El Salvador, one heard similar mining complaints. Gold is good, but the dirty waters, that's what we know.
A funny story about the UN. People call them by a nickname, and it's contentious to this day. And so, you know, people remember, okay, you don't have gangs controlling parts of the city in awful ways that they did before, but now you have this peacekeeping force that's their one good accomplishment that they're remembered for is you know, at least ending this sort of this widespread gang warfare there. But now they're recognized for their even larger contribution to something in Haiti, which is introducing cholera accidentally due to negligence of testing their soldiers. So soldiers from Nepal, you know, the waste from their plant went right into a river, and now, as you know, there's cholera in Haiti.
I just want to add one thing.
Please.
I was going to ask that as my question. I went to a Cuban talk recently, and the lady said how often Cuba was occupied by the United States. Haiti actually is occupied right now. And it's occupied by the UN now. It's not American Marines like it usually is, or the history. It's occupied by the UN peacekeeping forces. And I understand there's a big movement trying to get those people out because they want to have control of their own destiny. But